My name is Sarah Donovan, and I am in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Today is October 9th, 2020, and I am interviewing Melissa Ali of Los Angeles, California for the Oral History Project titled COVID-19 Teacher Poets Writing to Bridge the Distance, which will be archived by Oklahoma State University's Oral History Research Program. So Melissa, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I started teaching in, I can't even remember that far back, 1993. So I think I've always wanted to be a teacher. I am a mother of two. My youngest just graduated from college during COVID, so that was kind of a bummer that we didn't get to go and celebrate big because she has sickle cell disease and she wanted to go to New York because she is an actress. So that was a hard one, but she did it. My eldest is in medical school right now, so we're excited, but it's virtual.
Hmm.
That's where we are right now. I am a caretaker for my mom. And I have been teaching for, I think this is my 28th year, 27th year. It's been a long time. I've taught adult ed. I've taught high school at a conservatory for a little bit, a summer. My love is elementary school. I'm ready to move on to middle school soon. And I've taught kinder, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade. So everything but first.
And what is your current position?
Currently, I am a coordinator at Baldwin Hills Elementary School in Los Angeles, and I am the magnet coordinator. I am the English language development coordinator. I am the Title I coordinator, and I am the trauma informed coordinator.
Wow. And how are you coordinating all of those things right now?
I don't know. Right now, I feel like I'm underwater and I'm trying to get up. There are times when I can see the shore, and there are times when I can't, but it has to be done, so it gets done.
Can you tell us a little bit about the school that you're in?
Oh, I love the school. So Baldwin Hills is in a really unique place. Um, on one side, 5 miles up, you'll find houses that are $5 million. To the east, you'll find housing projects where people that need government assistance live. To the west side, a lot of gentrification going on, and north, even more. So we're in this real unique spot. And we are a culturally responsive school. We are a pilot, so we really don't have to do the mandates that the districts say. We've written our own curriculum. We look at the children that are in the seats in front of us, and that's what we base what we're going to read, the literature that we're going to do, how we write our stories, the project-based learning that we're going to do. We have themes, so we've got family. Well, no, we start off with self. We've got self, we've got family, community, state, nation, and world. And we hit those units, and at the end of each one of those units, we have a community celebration. Didn't get to do that this year. Well, the kids did, actually. It was a webinar and a Zoom, but it's a little different when people are there and they get to ask the children questions, and it's wonderful.
Can you give me an example of something that looks different in your school because of those initiatives that it may not, maybe a school down the street that's not a pilot?
Okay. So my classroom, the last time I taught was probably the most diverse, meaning the children were coming from different countries than I'd seen in a long time. I had 2 students from Brazil whose first language was Portuguese. I had a child from Sudan, from Ghana, North Africa. I can't remember. Donovan's father was from somewhere, North Africa. And so we're studying about them. So because my two students were from Portugal, I picked up a book of poetry from Portuguese authors. I had two students that were from the Philippines. And so we picked up a book. One of the books that we read during our All About Me time was about a Filipino family who they were in Manila, and the father just left one day. So we were reading that book. So we expose the children to different cultures. We make sure that they know that they're valued, that their language is valued, that their culture is valued. So it's really about promoting self-awareness, self-esteem, and it works.
It sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. Well, we're here today to talk about sort of the disruption and the change that was happening in education beginning in the early spring of 2020. So if you can think back to, March, April, where you first learned about COVID-19 and the impact it was going to have on your school, if there's a moment that you can take us to and kind of how you found out, and then talk a little bit about the impact of that.
Well, we had a family that went to a wedding, and they were on a cruise ship. And so when I knew, because the son was in my class at the time, no, he was in my class the year before, because I was in this position. So the mother and I became friends during the time that he was in my classroom, because I could see that he needed to be in an acting program. He was a character. So I gave her that information and put him in the school. And so we stay in contact. So she was letting me know that her brother was getting married and they were going to be gone for a week. So when they came back, we wouldn't allow them to come back to school. The district said that because they'd been on a cruise ship, they had to stay at home for 14 days. So within that time, I think like 3 days in, school shut down. So it was get your stuff and grab your iPad and let's go. And it was very disruptive. It was very disruptive. And parents that didn't have internet or hotspots, they were in a predicament. So I had to stay here for at least another couple of weeks to make sure that all of our children had devices, that they had the hotspots and they had the internet and some books. And that's been going on since. We're still there.
When this initially happened, I wonder, what obstacles did you face in getting the technology to the students or connecting with the families during this time? You were responsible for coordinating so many different things.
There was a lot of fear. So there was the fear of coming up to the school. There was the fear of, well, let me drop the device to you and the hotspot to you. That worked a little better because we could leave it on a porch and walk away, and then they could get it, call and tell them we're here and knock on the door. So there was a lot of fear. And I think because of it, we lost touch with a few families and they didn't come back, and we're still trying to find them. You go into the computer and it doesn't say where they're reassigned to. So that's a little heartbreaking because you don't know. I know one teacher lost 4 families. They could not afford to stay here anymore. So during the summer, they had to move. I think 2 of them moved to Texas and 1 moved Arizona. So they had to leave Los Angeles, which is understandable. It's expensive here.
During this time, it was also coincided with National Poetry Month, where teachers were coming together to write a poem a day, which is how this project began. We're bringing the teachers who were experiencing the impact of the COVID-19 crisis in their schools and also writing poetry at the same time, trying to see the connections that happened during that. So I would Wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you came to write poetry during this time and what that experience was like for you.
One of my colleagues, she was, I guess, hosting a week. And so she would email me and tell me, come and write something or read something. Or if she would say I wrote a poem, then immediately I would go because she is an amazing writer. And so I went on, and it felt so good to read the poetry that people were writing, to leave comments, to read the comments. It just took whatever anxiety that I was experiencing at the onset of the day, and it would just alleviate it. And I'd be able to sleep, because for a long time, I just couldn't sleep, just worried. But that was, it was wonderful. It was so wonderful.
Well, in the early days of April, people wrote a variety of poems that were kind of inspired by whatever people were, whoever was hosting, what they suggested to write, and some of that inspired it. And on day 4, you wrote a poem about your legacy. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about this poem and if you will read it for us.
Okay, so I think the poem was about hair, and Black women in hair. That goes back to slavery, and before. So I wrote about the legacy of Black hair, starting from, Africa through slavery to the 60s. So I did legacy, and then about my 2 daughters and how they wear their hair or wore their hair when they were little. So I'll read. Oops.
Yes, please.
Black hair legacy. Both my grandmothers, maternal and paternal, were biracial, not because their mothers were in love with white men, but because Black women are always the collateral damage of American society. Both wore their hair natural, long, wavy, thick, what is known as good hair. Both my grandmothers, they were married to the darkest men they could find, so they could have brown babies. Brown, nappy-headed babies, excuse me. My mother's hair, the opposite of her mother's hair. Short, crunchy, thin, but most of the time, it was natural. And how I loved her sandy pink sponge roller laden hair. It was the late 80s when I became conscious, or what is now called woke. Part 1, foundation. That is how I was raised. Part 2, Afros classes in college, but mostly becoming the mother of a chocolatey, curly-haired baby girl. My baby girl that needed to see her reflection, not only in my eyes, but also in my appearance. So I exercised the colonizers' deeply rooted indoctrination that blonde, straight hair is the golden standard of beauty. Gone are the gold highlights I'd worn in my hair since high school, trying to look like Miss Clairol. Gone is the overprocessed, burnt, lifeless hair, trying to look like Gwyneth Paltrow. Gone was the mindset that my hair needed to be tamed, controlled, seasoned, like the enslaved Africans in the 1600s. My hair, my crown, my glory, big, puffy, coiled, tangled, wild. My daughters, now 2, their hair, their crown, their glory, devoid of chemical heat, weave or dye, full of self-love, hair love, woke. A new Black hair legacy. I felt like I was missing a page, but
When you're reading this now, what stands out to you?
The description of my hair and looking at it, big, puffy, wild. I was like, oh, I really got it. Bing, point one. And that, it's not an easy transition because it's much easier to straighten your hair. It's much easier to put heat on it and just wear it. This takes a little time. So I think that.
What was it like writing this poem in the middle of all these things that were going on? Do you remember writing it?
I do. I remember that I wasn't thinking about what was going on the television, and maybe CNN was on because I think I kept it on just straight. I never changed the channel. Um, so it was a relief. It was me being able to turn that off and turn this on. And that was very hard at the beginning of the pandemic to do on my own. And that's why I said that the poetry was glorious, to be able to be an escape, to turn away, to turn it off, even though you can't turn it off, but for a little bit, for a little while.
Well, during this time, every state and school, sort of managed the impact of COVID in different ways. They had different regulations, restrictions, policies. Can you talk a little bit about how your state responded to the COVID-19 pandemic? And just, how your state responded, and then how that maybe impacted the learning over the course of those months.
Well, immediately they closed the schools like April 13th, so we didn't have a lot of time to prepare. We had time to gather a couple of things. The children were told, take everything that you need, take your iPad, and we would email you. So I remember feeling a little bit of a relief because I was scared, like everybody else, that this was going to come in and just run through the school, run through the teachers, run through the staff, and that was scary. It's real scary, and heartbreaking when things happen to children. That's hard to overcome. So I remember feeling a little bit of relief, but then feeling a lot of worry. We already have a huge digital divide where you've got one group of people who have computers at home, know how to work them, and then you've got another group of people, which is basically our community, some of the children in our community that don't have internet at home, don't have devices at home, don't have printers. It's going to be difficult for them, and we're going to lose kids, and how are they going to learn? And there's going to be such a big gap in education, bigger than it is now. So about 50 million things ran through my head. Worry, mostly.
In working with so many different teachers, in the role that you have, you must have more experience with the interactions with different teachers during this time. How did you notice that they responded? Were they prepared for this transition, or how did they work through it?
I don't think anyone was really prepared. I think that the love that they have for their students and the commitment to education allowed them to move forward. We do a lot of self-care, so we meet once a week and we go over things, we go over self-care, like you have to sit in front of the computer all this time, do eye exercises. One of the teachers, he sounds like a DJ, so he's the one that will lead the group, so he's really deep and his voice is calming, and it just makes you like, oh. So that's one of the ways that we prepare. But the teachers, it was hard. It was hard for all of them. I can't say that anybody was skated through. We missed seeing each other. So I think back then we would do happy hour once a week. Now not so much because you're having to do more work. They're on more. And so all of this FaceTime, it gets harder and harder every day. And I understand because I'm in a lot of meetings, but I am not in front of children. I've had to substitute, and you just have to be bigger than everything else. You know, you're competing with the television, and you're competing with the baby sister, with whatever else is going on in the room. So you have to, it's your own show. It's a TV show. It's the teacher 5 hours or 3 hours, whatever somebody's doing on that time. So
I understand that you did some writing with your students during this time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, during the time that George Floyd was killed, we had uprising and riots and fires, and I knew that that was going to scare the children. So part of my job as a trauma-informed care advisor is to make sure that the children that have any kind of trauma are able to talk about it, are able to get whatever that is and bring it out. And one of the best ways is poetry, has always been. So I think with the little ones, we drew pictures. So K1, we drew pictures. 2, 3, we wrote letters to the governor asking for, you know, what the things it was that they want. And 4th and 5th graders, we wrote poetry and then took poetry and put pictures with it. So they did the I see, I feel, because their senses were being overloaded. They can see the fires, they can hear, you know, they're watching George Floyd be killed over and over and over again. And so there were things that they needed to release. So they were able to release it in poetry.
So Melissa, since this is, you know, an oral history account, you know, that people will be watching at some point in the future, I wonder if you can tell a little bit about, from your perspective in Los Angeles, in your school, a little bit about George Floyd and what sort of happened and how your community reacted.
My community took streets always. There's always going to be marching. Black Lives Matters is always going to come out when anything happens that is unjust. Our school is one of our tenets is social justice. So we knew we had to come out and get these kids and start talking. And the thing that they were the most bothered with were the fires and people's buildings being burned down. And they kept associating that with the protests. And so I would have to bring them back to the protests aren't about the people that are protesting aren't the people that are burning down buildings and looting. The people that are protesting are still out there walking the streets and asking for justice and equity. It was difficult. One of our students has a father that's in the music industry. And so when she was on, he was in the background humming and singing a little bit. That was really nice for the K2. And the 2nd and 3rd graders, they felt so empowered by writing the letter to the governor about things that they want to look different. One of the students said that they want, when something like this happens, for there to be, for the fire department to come and for the fire department to be protected. So it's just really amazing the things that they see and how they process it. And we're just here to help them. But the 4th and 5th graders, they came up. All I had them do was I see, I hear, I smell, I wonder. So it was one of those poems, and they added, and then at the very end, we all ended it with, I have the power to create change through justice, force, by any means necessary. And peace, yeah.
Do you mind reading the whole thing?
The I See poem that I wrote with them, or Desensitized?
It's up to you, or you could read both.
I took the I See poem and I went in a little deeper because this was just so, like, I'll read the first 2 stanzas. I see.
So are you saying that sort of like the writing community that was on with the teachers, that you had this writing community with your students, And that their writing then inspired you to do more writing.
Absolutely. So their writing,
Okay.
what I gave them to do, inspired me to write an entirely different poem about how I was feeling and what was going on with me. So their poem was just I See. So I did the first stanza, and then so they could get an idea, and then they took the stanza and they added pictures to it. So I see the murders of Black people. I hear I can't breathe. I smell hypocrisy. I wonder if the revolution will be televised. And so from there, then they went and they all read, and it was wonderful. But from that, then I went to Desensitized. The last time I cried for a Black person shot by the police was when 12-year-old Tamir Rice was killed by Officer Lohman in 2014 for playing in the park. The last time I felt rage for a Black person shot by the police was when 23-year-old Karen Gaines was killed and her 5-year-old son Cody was shot by Officer Royce Ruby over a traffic warrant. The last time I felt pain permeate my soul for a Black person shot by the police was when Officer Yanez's bullet penetrated Philandro Castro, fatally shooting him during a traffic stop in front of his fiancée Diamond, her 4-year-old daughter, and Facebook Live. The last time I felt disgust about the death of a Black person under the remand of police was when 28-year-old Sandra Bland allegedly hanged herself in a jail cell with no physical evidence, fingerprints, methods, or surveillance tape that proved suicide. From 2015 to 2020, 5,000 Black men, women, and children were killed because of implicit bias, racism, fear, and anti-Blackness that is pervasive in the policing of this nation. Numbness flows through my veins with the coldness of the Antarctic Ocean. Heartbroken, unable to grieve, desensitized, and traumatized. I can only manage to study the death with an eye of an analysis. I can tell you the exact moment George Floyd took his last breath. I can give you a minute-by-minute recall from when Breonna Taylor was killed until they removed her from her home. I can tell you why it took 24 days for the police to arrest the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery. But what I can't do is shed a tear, feel any pain, or muster up the anger for unjustified deaths. I'm so numb that I too can't breathe.
Thank you for reading that, Melissa. Yeah.
I am literally in therapy trying to figure out why I cannot show emotion behind this. I can bring it, and then it just, and I hope that finishing this poem, because I hadn't finished it. I think I stopped at Sandra Bland. I stopped there when I was writing. Trying to learn how to exhale out of it. It's difficult, but it started me. My poem with the children, trying to help them help me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for acknowledging that it's unfinished, right? And this time we are, as teachers, having to support our students or be there for the students, and the question is, we are also as educators still working through it, and you are, as you say, trying to make sense of it, but carrying it as well,
And children are carrying it, and that weighs heavily on me too.
Mm-hmm. Well, as the school year so this was April, this was May, we're getting to into June. How did your school year end? How did you close your school year?
Knowing that the kids at least had a device, hoping that this would be over before school started again. So, with hope, optimism, and then when it didn't come to pass, that brought on another set of feelings. But at the end of the year, it was okay. I'll get to see them in September. We're going to be okay. I hadn't heard about anybody, getting sick at the school or any families. There was no loss that I knew about. And at that time, I'd only had one girlfriend to test positive, and she survived. So that was good. That was really good.
Well, I wonder if we can turn to sort of what's next, because we are still in the middle of things, but given your position and what you've learned and what you've been kind of making sense of, what do you think, where should we go next? What needs to change? How should education look different as we move forward?
It's hard because we're looking at the safety of people's lives. I know that children need to be in school. They need to physically be in school, especially the little ones. It's so hard for them to engage fully. And even some of the kids that are in middle school, because they leave here with all their friends and then they go out to different schools, and perhaps they don't have any of their friends in the Zoom. And so they're not engaging as much as they should be. And then our special ed children, they're not getting any of what they need. I mean, we're trying to make provisions for that by having some tutoring one-on-one. There are waivers coming through where kindergarten to second graders can come, and some schools are doing special ed students come. Our district is just now starting to do some waivers. I don't know how that's going to pan out with us. So there hasn't been any conversation about it, but I would like to see those kids that are most affected, the ones that aren't engaging, that don't turn their screens on when they're at home, that when you call on them, they're not there. Those are the children that I worry about the most. They need to be in school. The moms that work nights and don't want to hear a lot of noise in the morning aren't able to, get them up on time or fix their breakfast. So they're on TV, they're eating, they're doing whatever they can. I said TV. They're on their computer screens eating, when that's not the best time for them to eat. That's the best time for them to, be engaging in what's going on, what the teacher's saying. But we have to take them any way we can get them right now.
That's right.
But I'm worried because the numbers of children in elementary school that are committing suicide has increased. Black children are more disconnected with school now than they've ever been. So there's so much that you have to think about and worry about. But then there's, this isn't a joke. This is life and death. And so you're weighing kids not being engaged, life, it's a hard one, and I'm glad I don't have to make the decision.
I wonder if you have any words of advice, or more importantly, how do you think people, watching this oral history now, what do you want them to know or remember about this spring of 2020?
It was an uncertain time. People were all over the place. They didn't know if it was real. Some of them were rebellious. Some of them were overly cautious. They were hoarding things like toilet paper and food and not thinking about the person next to them. Except in the grocery store, you would find people who would have an overabundance of things, and they would see you standing there looking at it, empty shelves, and put something in your, I had somebody put some paper towels in my cart. So you had people who were being selfish, and then you had other people who were being generous. It's hard to tell them what happened, because you've gotten people are from one extreme to the next, and it was a difficult time. But you also got to spend time with your family. Like my family to this day, because of the beginning of COVID, we have Taco Tuesday Zoom nights now. So we're all on. It's like all the cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and we're talking. We know what's going on with the next person. We get to see their faces, see how they're doing. If somebody's having a bad day, we get to tease them. It brought us closer together as a family. I think further apart as a community. For some people, depending on where you live. One of my neighbors, she's out all the time just praying. Praying. She was out the other day when Trump was infected, praying for him. And other people were yelling at her because she was praying for him, because she's praying in the street loud. So I think I want everybody to know that it was from one extreme to the next, but we survived, but not everybody survived. And those that didn't, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to know that maybe something could have been different if the information had been out there and we knew more.
Well, I wonder if we could end with the moment of your family, and the poem that you wrote, Daughter, seems appropriate to end with, that kind of coming back to our humanity and where we are as individuals in this space.
Yeah. So I was watching, there's a movement called Girls Trek, and it's these two Black women. I saw their TED Talk, and they were saying how an airplane full of Black women die every month because of cardiovascular disease and obesity and diabetes, and that we really have to get out there and exercise and move, and walking is one of the best ways. And so they base it on Harriet Tubman and how she did all that walking people for freedom. So they had Nikki Giovanni and Angela Davis on, I think it was a Facebook Live. And so both of the women started off and were the daughters of. So they talked about how they're the daughters of their grandmother and then their mother. And I'm listening and I'm going, that's a great poem. That's a great poem. So I did Daughter of. So my name is Child. I'm the great granddaughter of Celestina, Mama, Miss Celeste, who was a survivor and an epic matriarch. Obia woman blood. Mama refused to be the white man's collateral damage, having to continue to work for her rapist. She gave her baby his last name, always referring to him as that white bastard. Her fingers spoon-fed me castor oil, her accent thick, knowing Spanish and Spanglish. But what she did best was curse, as the soles of her slippers that she threw across the room and upside your head with accuracy. She taught me to mind my own damn business. My name is Little Girl, and I'm the granddaughter of Esmeralda Victoria, Essie, Miss Essie, Mamacita, who was a survivor and a badass matriarch. Blood-stained hands, a Garveyite. Third world, poor, with 8 children. There was nothing she couldn't do. Bake, cook, sew, garden, crochet, hustle. Mother to everyone in need of love for 102 years. But what she did best was feed the souls of the hungry. She taught me that family is not made of blood alone. My name is Missy, and I am the daughter of Ida Celestina, mother, Ma, Mommy, Mrs. Porter, Auntie Ida, Nani. She is a survivor and a compassionate matriarch. The blood of Panama, Black nurses, Black power, and white disdain. Violated, battered, and hopeless. She rose like a phoenix from her ashes. BSN, MFCC. Like her mother before her, opened her heart and doors to all. But what she does best is inspire others and laugh. She taught me how to feel authenticity. My name is Melissa. I am a niece, cousin, sister, community daughter, and auntie. Girl, cousin, Auntie Missy, Melissa Ann. We are survivors and family. Some blood, some not. Cooking, eating, drinking, laughing, consoling, crying, cussing, and caring, all woven into the tapestry that is one. Ride or die, bring a gun to a knife fight. But what we do best is be present for one another. They taught me how to love and accept the people that you call family. My name is Sister Ali, and I am the daughter of revolutionary matriarchs. Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Toni Morrison, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. We are survivors and kindred spirits, blood in, blood out, fighting, writing, living, and breathing for the betterment of our people. Heavy-hearted, laborious, and traumatizing work. God's warriors, working from the soul, ripping off the bandages so we can heal. But what we do best is live in the truth. They taught me one voice, one action, one heart can become a movement. My name is Melissa Ali.